Hey everyone, on today's episode, we were talking all about how to really find the balance between making your website and the things that go on your website good for Google, but also making it good for the prospects and the people that you're serving and not straying one way too far or the other. And at the end of it, we really talk about how to find that balance and really some quick ways to understand, are you hitting that mark or not? Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am Logan Shinholster, and today I am switching it up a little bit, and we are switching it up. So over the past couple months, what we've done is we've just done podcasts with just me, and since we are looking at numbers a lot here at CGN, what we realized is over the past 5 years of doing this podcast, it was a lot of having guests on the podcast, which candidly, as the podcast host, makes it a lot easier to have a good conversation. Obviously not by yourself, but just looking at the numbers over the past couple months of me doing it by ourselves, it seems like the listeners and you guys also like having a guest on here more. So we're going back to the guest format for these conversations. So it's not just the Logan Show. So I'm joined by Ian. Ian is our Director of Marketing and SEO genius, and Mike, who is our Content Manager and Social Media genius. So what we're talking about today is the idea of SEO and just overall user experience. And the whole reason for this is we get a lot of questions here at CGN around, I've already got a website, I don't need another website, I just need SEO. And usually what happens is they come in, and when I say they, contractors come in, and the website is just blocks of text. And let's say it's a remodeler, and like very specific scenarios, we have a remodeling company right now who is doing their own website, and they're saying, hey, can you guys just do the SEO? I'll build the website. And Ian, I'd love for you to start off. When somebody comes in and the website is just blocks of text, or they built it themselves and they just say, oh, I just want SEO, walk me through that.
Yeah, I mean, initially that's a pretty big red flag, right? Like I think if you're not thinking about your SEO as a holistic enterprise, as a way that you represent your brand online, you don't really have that strong understanding of how SEO works. I think a pretty easy corollary is if you get a bunch of people in the door, right? SEO is a tool for moving people from a search engine to a website, but then that website is terrible, right? Those people aren't going to stay there, right? So SEO is not a solution in itself. It's something that you do as a part of a larger digital marketing effort online, and having a website that is easy to use, that conveys information accurately and clearly, that doesn't confuse your users, is a big part of making that traffic that you generate with SEO worthwhile in the first place. So I think when we have clients that come in and say something like that, where they're like, I just want the SEO, I just want this piece, is they're looking for a solution to a particular problem, but they don't recognize how SEO plays a part as a piece of their digital marketing efforts as a whole, right? So having that strong website as a foundation to build your SEO upon, right, is really, really critical, which is why for the majority of people that we have coming in, we try to steer them away from that direction, because we don't want to be building traffic to a website that isn't going to convert that traffic into a lead, right? So spending that money, generating those users, bringing people to your property is really a waste of your time if ultimately your website isn't prepared to turn those people into potential leads for your business.
So the analogy with that I typically will give is let's say you have a salesperson, and the salesperson is just, they're not selling anything. They're not having a successful time actually making a sale. And instead of looking at them going, okay, you know what we need you to call 10 times more people, the first thing we need to figure out is, well, why are you not actually landing any jobs?
For sure.
So before we start to throw fuel on the fire, let's actually figure out, is the fire set up for success? So how can somebody, Ian, know that maybe the issue is not their SEO. And when we say SEO, this is search engine optimization. In other words, how to get to the top of Google, which is what everybody wants, and it makes sense that everybody wants it. But how does somebody know that maybe the issue with the website isn't they need more SEO, maybe it's the website?
I'd say the easiest way is if you've been doing SEO before and you're not getting leads, that's a pretty good indicator, right? If you are successfully producing traffic, and it's not converting, that's fairly obvious that there's something off in terms of your messaging, in terms of your brand representation on the website. I think also if you've been doing SEO and not getting any results, right? If you've been producing content and you've been publishing that content, you've been putting out in the internet, you've been putting that effort in to make that content really good, and it's not getting ranked, it's not generating traffic, that generally means that there's something underlying in terms of your website structure from a technical perspective that is failing as well. So I think those are two really good indicators off the bat. I think also, right, like if you look visually at your own website and it does not, if you don't feel like it matches up to your competition, right? Like if you're looking at other people in your local market and you pull open your website and you pull open theirs and there's a clear visual difference, like the other one looks much more professional, that's another good indicator as well, right? Your search environment, right? The other companies that are doing the thing that you do in your local area, those are the people you're competing against, right? So a really easy way to evaluate your own website is just look at the competition. Go to Google, search the people, search your particular service in your region and start looking at their websites too. If they have one that looks more professional than yours, there's probably something that's lacking there. But those are three pretty easy avenues, I think, for identifying an issue in terms of your structure or your technical performance on your site.
So let's say somebody doesn't know if they're getting lead or they're getting good traffic and people coming to the website. What are some things that when you look at the website from a user experience perspective, you should see, you should maybe feel in your gut, like maybe something that's a little bit more like tangible that if somebody looks at the website, they can go, yeah, that looks good, or like, no, that doesn't look good?
Sure. I think right off the bat is like clear, specific language, right? If you go to a website page and you don't immediately know what that page is about or what service is being offered or what they're talking about, you're already off to a bad start, right? So right at the top, you should look for like what we call an H1. It's basically just the title of the page, and that should immediately convey meaning. I think another thing that's pretty clear is your navigation, right? So when a user comes to your website, they have to be able to figure out where stuff is, right? And a lot of that comes down to availability, like in terms of like places they can click, and then clear labeling with that as well, right? So if your website doesn't have very clear and demonstrative navigation on the top section on the right-hand side, because that's where you put it as a standard, that's an immediate sign that there's something wrong with your website. I think too, right, when you look at a website and it is hard to read or interpret the content, like if stuff is too close together, if you have like a dark text on a dark background, or if you have large blocks of text with nothing to break them up, all of those are pretty good indicators that your website is in need of some updates.
And I find a lot of people don't even know what's on their website because they look at this as like just something you have to have and like, oh, the company told me this is what I need. But if you
Sure.
actually said, hey, walk me through just, you don't need to know all the words, but some of the basics around what is being said on the website, if they go, oh yeah, I don't really know what's on there, that's...
Yeah, that's probably the biggest indicator. Like that represents, I think, a lack of understanding of the current nature of marketing, the current nature of business, how the internet works. The truth is that your website is no longer like a check the box kind of situation, right? We have had the internet around for quite a long time now, and people have learned how to use it very effectively. And there are rules too, right? It's not just the Wild West anymore. You can't just throw up, right, like some like text on a web page on a URL and hope that it's going to function, right? People have dialed this process in. We know what is effective in terms of design. We know what is effective in terms of messaging, right? So if you don't know what's on your website, right, you need to take some time and figure that out first, right? You need to understand that a website is a really kind of fundamental piece of representing yourself online. It's the core hub for the rest of your marketing activities, right? If you're running ads, where are you running them to? You're going to be running them to the website, right? And if your website isn't converting those people, ads are worthless, right? If you're doing SEO, search engine optimization, where's that traffic going? It's going to your website, right? You're doing social advertising, where's it go? Website. Right, so your website is the hub of your business online, which means it's also like your primary brand representation online as well. So if that website is not effectively conveying what you do, your values, right, and the image of your company, and putting you out there as a professional, right, in your space, then it is not serving the function it is meant to.
So one of the things I tell people is like your website is like the resume for your business, in the sense of the way that, like, right now we're hiring for a couple of different positions here at CGN. When I get a resume in for the role, the first thing I'm looking at is just the basic formatting. Does it look like crap? Is it, especially, and it's different for every role. Like if it's like right now we're looking for like an executive assistant, which is somebody who has to be very detail oriented. Mm-hmm. And if it's a resume that the formatting is different, and they say that one of the job dates, it has hyphens while the next one has forward slashes, like that to me is a minor detail, but like if your whole job is based off of that, that's a big deal. The website, from how I describe it, is the same thing, where people are first looking to see, do I even want to see this, or does it look like it was created with Microsoft Paint? And then the next piece is what's actually on the website. So the same way that I'm now looking at what is their actual work history. If it's for the sales role that we're hiring for, do they list numbers on there of like, sure, it's great that you said you called a lot of people, but like, did you sell anything or not? So am I off in using that analogy that the website is the resume, but for your business trying to attract new prospects?
You're definitely not wrong. I think something that is sometimes like a little bit more relatable to like a business owner in particular is that it's your digital storefront, right? I think, and you can think of digital marketing in the same way that you would conceptualize building a store, right? And then starting to put billboards around town, right? So like if somebody shows up at your place of business and it's a dirty hole in the wall without a good sign, right? Like that doesn't clearly articulate your value, and they go in the front door and your lobby is a mess, right? And you don't have anywhere for them to sit, they're probably not going to stay very long, mm-hmm, right? So I think for sure, right, resume is a very apt representation. It's like, this is your opportunity to sell yourself and your value. I think too, that analogy of your digital storefront is pretty clear in terms of, right, like if you're setting up a business, you should do it somewhere that looks good, looks professional. You should make sure that your name is on the outside of the building with maybe a little tagline about what services you provide. Because I, as a user or right, a parishioner, need to show up and see the front of your thing and say, okay, right, I know what I'm getting into, right? So definitely not off. I think same thing too is like if you're thinking about all the different digital advertising or digital marketing methods you can use, SEO, advertising, all of that, it's the same thing as setting up billboards around your town or sticking signs in the ground or building relationships with other partners, right? The only difference is it's a new landscape, right? Instead of doing it in your town, you're doing it online, right? So you need to make sure that as you are building up that image of yourself, you're doing it in a way that's professional and articulates your value.
And when it comes to, let's say, like on the SEO side, a big piece of this is content, like actually creating new blog posts, which is like an article that's specific to whatever topic you want to write about. And it's funny because I remember when blogs first were a thing back, we were doing it for Premier Ponds, my dad's old company, back in 2014. I was like, oh yeah, like Tom Reber said that we gotta write blogs, and he was like, is this the thing that like people type, it's like a diary? And I'm like, I think so, but like I think there's a business function to them. Well, now fast forward 9 years and it's a lot more
defined.
And people do it and it's not so like weird, quote unquote, anymore. But I'm seeing this trend as we do these marketing strategies, and I'm looking at who some of their competitors are, where it'll be, let's say the competitor or the other company will write like, here's the 5 things to consider when remodeling your kitchen, and it will be like 5 different things, 1 sentence each, no photos, no nothing. So I would say if I read that and I was looking at, like, if I was a user trying to figure out, hey, I'm about to remodel my kitchen, what should I consider? And all I saw was like a couple generic bullet points about like, hey, make sure you think about who you hire, make sure you think about what you want your kitchen to do. What benefit does that have to the SEO as a whole?
Yeah, most of the time, none. if I'm being honest, if you see that kind of content on a site, typically that is an indication either that there's an amateur working at the company who has read an article or two about SEO and knows they need to be producing content and is making their first attempt, or someone's gotten themselves into bed with an SEO company that really doesn't know what they're doing. I think that the same rules apply in terms of content. Is it needs to be helpful and useful, right? So Google's job, or search engines in all, their job is to deliver information, right, to a user looking for something, right? So if you're putting out mediocre content that doesn't really answer the question that a person might have, then it doesn't have any value, right? And so Google's not going to promote that. They're not going to push that out because it doesn't reflect well on Google, right? Google wants to make sure that they are getting people the answers that they want and that they're getting them the best version of that answer as well. So content is not, especially written content, is not a one-dimensional thing. It is a process of building out a resource that is going to comprehensively answer a question for somebody, and that means more than just text, right? That means visuals, so that can be photos, that can also be videos, that sometimes can mean graphics as well that you use to display, right, a reference to a concept or explain an idea in a simple way. But if you look at a well-structured blog, you should see defined sections with good use of headers and bullet points to break up the text to make it more readable. You should see images, and if you're looking at a really, really high-end piece of SEO content, oftentimes there's going to be a video at the top of that article as well. Because there are a lot of different things that go into making a useful resource, but if you think about it as a user, like when was the last time you logged on to any website page and read like more than 100 words of straight text just in a block?
Forever ago.
Right? It's honestly, like, it's painful at a certain point. And when you get there to that page and it's like you just see this wall of words, right? Immediately in my brain, I'm like, there's no way, I don't want to read this, right? It's overwhelming, right? And so a part of your job as a content creator, especially as an SEO content creator, is to make those words more digestible and to use visuals and to use video and to use graphics to help make those concepts simpler and easier to understand and also more engaging, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a ton of other people out there competing with you, right? And so if you're going to put the minimum effort in and you're just going to put a block of text out there, you might get a little bit of value out of it, but the guy next door that's adding a video, that's adding those graphics, that's making sure it's formatted in a way that's readable, is going to blow you out of the water every single time.
Mike, so this was for you, and you'll see how this comes back to SEO if this is what I think it is. How does a post on Facebook or Instagram or a YouTube video, what tells those platforms, the algorithm on those platforms, this is a good piece of content, let's show it to more people?
The number one thing is engagement. It's how long people are consuming that content. It's really the TikTokification of it all. So if, for example, the back end of YouTube, let's use YouTube for the example. We have data on every single video for how long somebody has watched that video. It's called average watch time. If we put out a 5-minute video and people are only sticking around for 30 seconds, that video tells YouTube, hey, this video is probably not that great. However, we put out a 5-minute video and people are sticking around for 4 minutes, all of a sudden, what's in this video that people like, that people are sticking around to watch? Well, now let's go show it to even more people to see if it sticks that way. And so that's kind of how social media works as a whole now, and TikTok really changed the game because of that.
And Ian, is there an aspect of that, like Mike's talking about engagement, is there an aspect of that Google looks at on 100%. The website? Okay, how does that work?
Yeah, well, there's a variety of different, just like with social media platforms, pretty much any digital marketing method is algorithmically driven, right? And what those algorithms are doing is they are assessing, right, how engaged a user is with that piece of content. Then that is being used to essentially give it an upvote or a downvote, right? Like the more engagement you see, the better your content will perform. The way SEO tracks that is a little bit different than with a social media post, because there's a little bit more dynamism in terms of like how you can interact with a blog post. So it tracks a variety, search engines track a variety of metrics. One of them is going to be scroll depth, right? So it's like when somebody lands on the page, it's like, are people staying on that page for long enough, right? Are they moving up and down? Are they actually reading the text, or are they just arriving at the page and then clicking back, right, to get away from it? There's also tracking of individual like elements. There's like, are they clicking on things on those pages too? Like, are they watching videos that are associated with that piece of content? So there's a variety of different metrics that go into evaluating like how engaged somebody is with it. Most of it has to do with time on page, right? That's the really core metric when it comes to SEO, because that is how they assess how engaged somebody is with that piece of content, right? If somebody's there for 33 seconds and then they leave, right, that's maybe mediocre, right? If they're there for 5 seconds, that's terrible. If they're there for a minute and a half, they probably read the whole thing, which means they liked it.
And has that always been a thing? Like, or is that like I guess what's the trend there? Is Google like looking at that more and more? Are they looking at that less and less? Has it been a thing since 1996? And
that's really honestly, it's hard to say exactly like where and when Google brings different signals in, because the Google search algorithm changes all of the time, right? They update it probably 6 or 7 times a year. But in terms of like time on page, definitely that's been something that's been there for a long time. But also more prominently in terms of direct impact would have been like clicks from search too, right? Because that's native to their platform as well. So it's like when somebody Googles something and then clicks on the URL, right? That's a pretty one-to-one for them. That's easy for them to track. Google is getting better and smarter over time. And the thing is, like, when you think about a search engine, is like their properties, like everything that is within their scope is the internet, right? So it's like you might see it as your website, but Google sees it just as content that's out there, right? So it's like they are able to see how people are engaging through a variety of metrics, many of which they don't even tell us about, but some of those core ones in terms of clicks from search and time on page are some of the big signals that you see in terms of content performance.
so like last question I have around this. So it sounds like what you're saying is the answer just to create longer content so people stay more. Is that kind of how YouTube works as well? Like, walk me through what that looks like.
It can be longer content, but sometimes it isn't, right? Like, so Mike and I oftentimes will work as a team for producing content in-house at CGN. Like, I will do a lot of the writing and the research for what the topic is, but then Mike will produce a video resource for me on that same topic to boost the performance of the blog. Oftentimes with those blogs that have videos, one of the primary things that they engage with is just the video, which sits at the top of the page, right? So it's not necessarily that the content needs to be longer, it just needs to be good and answer the question, right? So if you can succinctly and efficiently answer that question in 5 paragraphs, then that might perform really well, right? If you can't, which most of the time is the case, then you need to make it longer. You need to make sure that you're addressing the issue. So like it's not really about longer as much as it is about like quality and the way that you present that, right? So the visual of it, how quickly it loads, right? How easy it is to understand, right? All of those are influencing factors. But ultimately, it's like you could write 10,000 words, and if people only read 5 of them, that's not going to benefit you at all. Something I would say too on the social media front is like SEO is an interconnected web of everything that's on the internet, right? So recognizing that your content doesn't live on an island, like it is supported by the rest of the things that happen on the internet. So if someone is referencing that on Reddit and they link back to your article, that's going to have a benefit, right? If you're doing a post on social media promoting that piece of content and that drives users from a social platform to that piece of content, that's going to benefit its performance too. So design is big, length can be big, but it's more about like, is this engaging? Is it good? Does it answer the question? And are you doing a good job of sharing that with your audience?
So it's kind of like with like Wikipedia articles, like the Queen of England, like there's probably not too much updating happening at this point, but it's not like the length of the Queen of England article that like dictates how much Google's going to like it or how much people like it. It's just they add on more length because now they got to have a whole section for death and legacy, which is just another, not just like adding fluff for the sake of fluff. It's really, be succinct if you can be, but make sure you fully give the reader whatever they're actually looking for.
For sure.
Okay.
And here's the thing too, right? We just talked about, staying on page longer. Like that's a very good indicator that you're putting out good content. If we add in a section about death and legacy, but it's good stuff, just think of it like you're reading a really interesting book. If the book isn't interesting after the first 2 pages, you're probably going to put the book down. But if you are able to be ingrained into the information and the storyline and you keep reading it down, all of a sudden adding in more sections makes more sense.
Yeah. And on top of that, Google is smart enough to know what the different sections of your blog are, especially if you've structured it properly, right? So Google does not just deliver people to the top of pages, right? Sometimes they will find a chunk of copy that is like midway down your page that really addresses a query that people are asking about, and they will use that piece of your content as the link referential. So it's like that might show up on search itself as what's called a featured snippet, but like there's a variety of different like components, but like adding new sections to older blogs is a great way to optimize like content that's underperforming. But it's really an iterative process, right? Like anything that you do online, you need to create something and see how people like it. Make sure you're sharing it with as many people as possible through social, through email, through whatever, right? And then if it doesn't do what you want it to do, take a look at it again. Take a look at your competitors, see what they're doing for that same thing, and make updates to the blog, and that will hopefully improve performance over time.
Cool, love it. So it sounds like, wrapping this up, the biggest thing here when we talk about like the how do we balance writing it for Google but also writing it for people is essentially if you wouldn't read it yourself, or if it just in your gut it looks like crap and you're saying, I wouldn't read that, but maybe this marketing voodoo stuff works, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah. I'd say by and large,
a good rule of thumb. Good on that one. Okay, beautiful. All right, cool. Well, I think that wraps up how to make sure that we're optimizing for both Google and people. But it really sounds like it's people first, with the idea that Google still has to know about it and it still has to make sense. And I guess the beauty of all this is if you think it's really good content and you put it out there, and Google will then take it and put it in front of people, people will tell you if it's good or not, because then you'll see, because Google may not show it anymore, and that's really what we see a lot of is people that write their own blogs. It's not that you can't do it. It's just Google takes it, puts it out there, and people go, I don't like that. And then Google puts it away in the back seat, never to be seen again. If you found this valuable and you want to learn a little bit more about SEO and what it looks like to have an agency like CGN do SEO for you, head on over to our SEO page on our website. We'll go ahead and we will put the link in the show notes. Check it out. No pressure. At least you know what is supposed to go on behind the scenes.